G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today, we're going to be having a look at a fairly special plane. This is the P-51D-10, which sits in the premium tree at around battle rating 4.3, and is, in my opinion, one of the most capable planes in the game, period. The P-51Ds in general, in fact, are some of the most capable planes in the game. However, they are easily one of the most misused and poorly treated planes, let's say, out of every single plane in the game. American props kind of get that bad rap. They kind of get that sort of feeling of incapability. However, you have to use these planes properly, otherwise you're going to have pretty crappy results, and I see that all the time. So, you're talking about all this proper use, but how actually do you use these things? Well, first of all, it is extremely important to climb. Climbing, as you will find out in a future tutorial video that is coming out very soon TM, is really important for having an advantage over your opponents. What kind of advantage are you speaking of? Well, it is actually quite simple. Being above an opponent means that they can't burst climb up to you. And even though it is a little bit boring, managing your climb is extremely important. Climbing to that altitude will give you the results later on. It's not an instant benefit type plane where you just sort of go in, do whatever you want, and then get killed and go. I mean, you can play it that way, but it's honestly more satisfying to climb a little bit, take that time. Perhaps it might be a little bit boring, but it will pay off in the end, and it will pay off in absolute dividends. It'll be juicy every single kill that you get with a P-51, because that patience really makes the plane tick. Having that little bit of altitude also means that your plane, which in this case here has I think it's a two-stage supercharger, is able to actually engage that second gear of the supercharger. So if you get above, I think it's about 4,200 meters, the second stage kicks in and it gives you a lot more power relative to many other props at this battle rating. So you're able to gain a lot more speed, perhaps not climb quite as much because you are a fairly heavy plane, but once you do make that speed, you can keep it very easily if you play the plane properly. The P-51D, when it gets to its sort of glory area, it's fairly strong. In fact, in some cases it's unstoppable. The P-51, when you maneuver it properly, when you play it properly, is an absolute monster. And in this particular battle that I played, which, by the way, if it looks a little bit funny to you, is because the footage itself is from last patch. This plane, I absolutely love it. And that's the problem with a lot of American props. They just take a little bit of patience, and a lot of players are either too inexperienced or unwilling to show that patience, or to have that patience, rather. The P-51s are easily, without a shred of a doubt, one of my favourite fighters, at least at prop tier, in the game, just because that patience is so critical. And so many people think P-51, he's probably going to commit to head-ons, he's probably not going to save his altitude, and then they end up getting slaughtered by someone that actually kind of knows what they're doing. So, after all this climbing, I've only managed to reach, I believe it's 3,000 meters. However, I'm sticking with my team. That's another important thing you have to figure out in the P-51s. You have to stick with your team. Because if you don't, you're going to be left out alone. And then when you're like that, you have a much higher chance of getting swarmed. Not only that, chances are if you climbed away from your team, your enemies are climbing towards you, because they sort of tend to climb on opposite sides of the map, just due to the way the runways are sort of situated. Now in this case it is America and Japan versus everyone else, which I don't really know why. I genuinely think this is a stupid idea. It was fine the way it was. I don't see an issue. Just because top tier is that way, it doesn't mean that props have to be that way. I really loved the America, Britain, France, even Sweden versus the Axis. It was really fun, and I just don't get why. I do still appreciate that the matchmakers are nation-based rather than just sort of all in together. But I would really like to kind of, see it the way it was, because the way it was fine, quite frankly. So, returning back to the footage, we have a little bit of a situation here. We have a Bf-109 rapidly approaching there off to the right of our wingtip. We have an SM-91 who's 5 kilometers away and doesn't really look like he's going to leave the area. We have a P-1Y1, which isn't really a threat, but can be a distraction to friendlies. And we have a Brigand at altitude. Now, the Brigand isn't a very good fighter, but when it's at altitude, it has the propensity to boom and zoom, and that could leave you with some hurdy hurts, to say the least. Now, thankfully for us, the SM-91 decides that he doesn't really want to engage with us. The BF-109, however, does, so I'm going to put the plane into a slight dive, pick up some speed, and then I'm going to cut above, and then give them a profile to sort of show as little of the plane as possible, staying into the vertical because I've picked up some speed, and as the F4 sort of loses out its altitude and its speed and begins to stall, I'm able to sort of put the flaps down and get on the advantage here, going for a little bit of a burst with the 50 cals. Now I am using stealth belts because the 50 cals as of patch 2.1 and 1.101 are pretty crap, to be honest. I don't know what's with it. They just don't seem to be doing the damage that they used to. So what I'm going to do is run stealth belts to try and get as much gun time as possible to surprise my opponents. Speaking of surprise, the F4 decides to pop up and a G6 gets distracted by friendly, and I do manage to get a nice little pilot snipe. Once I've noticed that, I've noticed the BF-109F, who was going for me originally, is now put himself well up into a vertical for the XP-55. This is a perfect bait. And this is something that you don't really see too often. The XP-55, whilst kind of in a 1v1, has ended up baiting the BF-109F for me, but unfortunately he's decided to duck down to low altitude before I can really give it a go. So the Brigand is kind of showing interest, but not really. I'm pretty confident fighting a Brigand, even with an energy disadvantage, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it alone and go for a little bit of lower altitude. The XP-55 is now, what I can see, being chased by the BF-109, which is not a good sign and is kind of a poor play by the XP-55, but that's okay, because when you have teammates, you have people to have your back, which is really, really important. The BF-109 has realized his mistake and is going really quickly, so he's either going to compress into the ground or rip his wing or just not be a threat anymore. He's managed to keep his speed low enough, but you can see from the little dive that I've done, I haven't wasted a lot of energy, but I've picked up a lot of speed, and that is exactly what the P-51s are really, really good for. Once you get that altitude, it is very, very hard, unless you throw it into so many maneuvers, to let go of that speed. The pure energy retention this plane has is phenomenal, and I can pick up enemies that are at low altitude and at low speed, like that Focke-Wulf 190, and just make complete mincemeat out of them. That's a second very, very easy kill. And now I'm going to go onto the C205, because the 205 is about to get basically Piper Perry the AS6M5 there. I managed to crit and destroy the C205, and now I've noticed that the Yak-9K is a little bit slow and low, so I'm going to quickly switch to him because there are fewer and fewer enemies left on the board there. The BF-109F now turns right in front of me, and okay. Kamikaze it is. So, you can see that engagement went from basically, what the hell, there are so many enemies, to holy crap, we pulled through and it was really, really easy. And that's because you managed to keep your energy, and if you can keep that energy, you can convert it into speed, and once you get speedy, there's really no turning back. The P-51 just exceeds and accelerates and just outperforms everything else when you have that energy advantage. But getting that energy advantage, especially when you have some teammates, is really, really important. So, moving on a little bit, the XP-55 and I have gone back to base to rearm and refuel. The Wyvern has decided that he wants to come out and have some fun. Now, the Wyvern is actually really fast. This guy is closing the distance. Before I took off, he was 8 kilometers away, and now he's 5, 4, and closing really, really quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm not even going to go for altitude. I'm going to go for a bit of speed, go for a little quick burst, and just pull off at about 1.4 there, getting a little hit, and it looks like I've done a little bit of damage to his oil, or it could be the AAA, and for some reason the AAA manages to do some critical damage. There we go, and I get the kill. I probably shouldn't have gotten that kill, managed just to pilot snipe him, but you know what, I'm going to take it. This particular match demonstrates how important an altitude advantage really is, and exactly what you can do when you have an altitude advantage. The P-51s are perfectly capable. 4.3 is a good battle rating for them. And of course 5.0 for the Mustang D30. Naturally, I don't like how the rudder locks up. I understand that that is an issue, but that is something that you can work with. Try and play below 450 kilometers per hour, and if you are, try and compensate with a little bit of elevator and a little bit of ailerons, and you will manage it. This plane is capable as a dogfighter as long as you don't run out of energy, and as a boom and zoomer, as you can see, it is an excellent fighter. P-51s, beautiful planes. I've always loved them. They are one of my favorites in the game for that exact reason, and hopefully this footage kind of shows you why. There's me getting my F104C. No, I'm not going to make a video on the F104s because I can't stand them. But in the meantime, enjoy. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.